Throughout competitive Pokemon's history, there have been a lot of controversial bans. There have been a lot of controversies around things that didn't even get banned. Stuff that got tested and didn't get banned, or stuff that didn't even get tested. There's very rarely a tiering decision or action or opinion that doesn't leave people in online screaming matches. Even for stuff that seems very obvious. Like three that come to mind off the top of my head are Diamond and Pearl Garchomp, and Black and White 2 Genesect, and XY Aegislash. All things that seem very obviously like, yeah, of course you get rid of those. Those are insane. What are you talking about? Where's the controversy? But at the time, in a phenomenon I like to refer to as current gen blindness, people are like, oh, no, you just have to play around them, They don't outspeed and OHKO literally everything in the game, so they're not Ubers. And, they kind of do, at least in the case of the first two, whereas Aegislash just lives everything and then kills you. Yeah, so there have been a lot of controversial bans. But the ban we're going to talk about today is what I think is the most controversial in history. I don't have statistics or whatever backing this up, but I do have opinions, I do have supporting facts, let's say. Oh yeah, look at Deoxys Attack on the screen right now. Yeah, that was OU in early Black and White. Because that's the kind of tier we were dealing with. It wasn't enough that we had all this chaotic new stuff, like, oh, there's another one, Doriyuzu, before it was even named Excadrill, with fully unleashed Sandrush. That was the kind of wild stuff that was running around. And we thought, why not? Let's throw Darkrai and Skyman and Deoxys Attack into this metagame. What could go wrong? And it was at this point that the tiering officials said, BKC, write a script for your videos in 12 years. And I said no. So, this ban that we're going to get into, I unfortunately couldn't find any video footage of, which is a shame, because the only footage of early Black and White comes in the form of YouTube videos of recorded Wi-Fi battles. And the thing we're talking about is Drizzle and Swift Swim. And Wi-Fi battles had a more casual, competitive atmosphere, so people weren't spamming the most broken combinations of Pokemon they could find as they were on Pokemon Online, the simulator we used back then. And so on Wi-Fi, then if someone brought something like Politoed and Ferrothorn, or Natore as it was called back then, and then 4 Swift Swimmers, you'd be like, dude, what are you doing? Come on, we're having fun here. This is not for anything serious. Why are you doing this? Or Rainstall or something similarly irritating to face. Whereas on the latter, it was all fair game. And Pokemon Online did not have replays. So, yeah, that is why we are going with this. But I thought it was fun, because this is a video from my old buddy Blingo X24, and it gave me a blast of the past briefly. And you got to see, oh, look, Skyman's in this one. Yeah, this is an OU battle. So we're going to get to the object of, what's the opposite of the object of affection? Object of severe burning hatred. Yeah, DOA coming in to revenge Skyman in OU. That's the metagame we had. So, now let's get on track. So, even in this metagame of crazy stuff running around, with your Deoxys and your Darkrai's and your Skymans and your Sandrush Excadrills, then people were saying, yeah, look, this permanent rain thing is not good. It enables so much. This was before people even considered Scald to be the automatic addition to every water type in the game. By the way, people were still using Surf on defensive Politoed. So it wasn't that as much as just, yeah, I'm going to click Specs Hydro Pump now. Or, it was pretty much Specs Hydro Pump, because there are a lot of good Swift Swimmers. It wasn't just Kingdra and Kabutops, although those alone were the dumbest thing ever. And then you had Ludicolo, Gorobis, Omastar. Yeah, ridiculous. So, Drizzle Swim was really dumb. But the thing is, back then, nobody said, oh, it's specifically Drizzle that's making the metagame unplayable or unbearable or anything. It was just, oh yeah, rain in general is a really big problem and we should get rid of it. And then there were like choruses of ban all permanent weather because Doriyuzu, Excadrill is also the dumbest thing ever. But this brings us to the most controversial ban in history, in my opinion. It's not a Pokemon ban, which is part of why it was such a big deal. So most of the time throughout competitive history, it's all about banning a Pokemon, right? I mean, yes, we have our clauses for OHKO moves and evasion and stuff like that, but generally it's rare that moves beyond those obvious extremes are banned. It's why it took so long to ban Baton Pass, for example. People were saying, wait, why are you banning a move? That's weird. And that's why banning things like Scald and Stealth Rock and U-Turn, or switch moves in general, never took off. Because just the idea of banning a move is just very alien, very weird. But banning a Pokemon, yeah, no problem. So furthermore, the general idea of banning philosophy is keep it simple. Because you can make any broken Pokemon not broken by removing what makes it broken, right? Like there's a famous example of Gen 4 where I think that they had some ladder where they allowed Groudon and Kyogre in OU, but they were both at level 80, they were still stupid, funnily enough. But like their stats weren't very good because they were at level 80, relative to OU Pokemon. Stupid ads, good lord. That's the general idea. Like, yeah, we probably wouldn't have had to ban Salamence in Gen 4 if you had banned Draco Meteor and Outrage on it. Yeah, that doesn't sound like a very broken Pokemon, but it's not a very consistent way of doing things. So you try to keep some consistency to your logic, so you keep it simple, and you don't enact complex bans. And this ban we're talking about was, well, not the first complex ban in history, because in GSC there had been bans on Hidden Power, Raikou, and Zapdos, which was later reversed, and Sleep Perish Trapping. But that was generally a kind of honor system thing in a much smaller community. And those kind of complex bans were unheard of in the era of modern Pokemon, which I define as Gen 4 forward, because that's when democratic community tiering came into existence. That's when the idea because the community was growing so much because of the addition of Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi battles in Gen 4 meant more people playing competitive Pokemon, meant more people coming to Smogon and playing on simulators, and so with this explosion of the player base, then it was much different to the days of Gen 3 and before, where it's pretty much, the guy in charge, he's really good, so we're just going to listen to whatever he says. Oh, Celebi's and Ubers? Okay. Oh, Celebi's in OU now? Okay. Oh, he's thinking about letting Mew in OU? Yeah, I guess we can try. Oh, he decided against it. Yeah, never mind. So it went from a much smaller thing to let's try to have a bigger process out of it. And those were all, regular Pokemon bans throughout Gen 4. From Garchomp to Deoxys Speed to Skyman and early Platinum, stuff like that. So nothing past a Pokemon ban took place. So then you get to early Gen 5, and Gen 5 threw everyone for such a loop because it had so many unprecedented factors. Just with, suddenly you had these moves that were boosting 3 stats at the same time, with Quiver Dance and Shell Smash, and just like all this monstrous stuff. People were freaking out because we had just banned a bunch of dragons in Gen 4, and Hydreigon and Haxorus were now joining the fray, and Haxorus in particular. I mean, that attacks out with Swords Dance and Dragon Dance? What are you doing? So, there was a lot of uncertainty going around. We didn't help our case by freeing Deoxys Attack and Skyman and Darkrai. Yeah, who would have thought we would have banned those? That wasn't a waste of time. Yeah, but the elephant in the room was, of course, permanent weather, which was completely unprecedented. Permanent weather besides Sandstorm and Hail. So we had, and of course Sandstorm got a boost in the form of, the ability provides direct offensive buffs, not indirect buffs as in Sandstorm chips Pokemon, affected by it, but direct as in, Excadrill's now the fastest Pokemon in the game. Landorus Incarnate, because there was no Landorus Therian, so it was just Landorus. Landorus gets really strong because of Sand Force, or Sand Power as it was translated back then. I think Sand Rush was translated as Sand Throw. Yeah, BKC, aren't you rambling a lot? When are you going to get to the point? When I get around to it. This rambling thing is the appeal. So, but I am getting to it, don't worry. And I even wrote down some notes for myself so I don't lose my train of thought halfway through. See, meeting in the middle, compromising. So, people were talking about the idea of banning all weather or doing something, because clearly, even in the wake of all these unanimous banned monsters running around like Skyman. Oh yeah, you had Manaphy running around in permanent rain. So that was a lot of fun. And that's when Alderon's proposal. Come on, and it's sick. Okay, well, I'm gonna mute it for the next however many seconds for this awesome ad about having a good smile. I still haven't seen Smile. I'm sure it's fine, but yeah. So, and okay, back to the good stuff. Yeah, so Alderon's proposal specifically targeted Swift Swim in conjunction with Drizzle. And you're wondering, well, why didn't you just ban Swift Swim, period? Well, because, that was why it was such an uncertain time, because the idea, we were still figuring out what, and I don't mean this as an excuse, because I'm actually extremely against Alderon's proposal, but to give an idea of why Swift Swim wasn't just offered up on the chopping block itself, was because we're still figuring out those definitions. Because, well, it's clearly not broken on its own, and and it was a similar argument for Politoed. Well, Drizzle itself is not broken because Politoed is not broken. It's the Pokemon in Drizzle that are broken, which is, it's a whole mess, and I disagree with it then, and I disagree with it now. But that's the kind of messy tiering discussion that permeates pretty much every tiering discussion. So, and in a metagame that was as clustered as early Gen 5, that battle that was on the screen from my buddy Blingo, which I'll link in the comments, it was from like October, November, December 2010. Crazy. So, and this thread, January 15th, 2011. So that was, Black and White was released in September of 2010. So the metagame is 4 months old at this point. And, we're already talking, wow, maybe we should get rid of this big thing. So, because people are wondering, what do we target? I mean, it's a discussion that continues in Gen 5 today. This metagame's a mess. Where do we go? Or what do we start? Because then we're going to have more problems. And it's a whole different story when it's a generation that's long after the fact, obviously. During current gen, it's way different because there's time to see what happens. So, this proposal came about in that, as we see in the thread, and I'll link the thread in the comments if you want to read it at your leisure. There's a lot of stuff that's not very competitively minded because it talks about the whole. I'm not losing my train of thought. I'm just trying to organize it so I don't scream about three things at the same time. The goal is to create a competitive metagame, right? And diversity of choice in a competitive metagame, it's not that you shouldn't care about it, but when you prioritize it, then you risk leaving in something unhealthy. Because if you remove an element that has a lot of diversity but then is broken, then there's going to be new diversity that takes its place. So, you say, oh, like in this thread, there's a lot of talk about, oh, well, there's a lot of different rain playstyles. It's like, well, yeah, and there would be a lot more playstyles that would be varied and popular and viable in the wake of rain being banned. So the focus on diversity, preserving rain diversity is very short-sighted, and a big reason why it's so disappointing that this proposal was enacted. Because it seems it's so unprecedented. Like, hey, yeah, so rain is an exception because, permanent weather in OU is unique and never been done before, so we want to preserve it at all costs. And that's another not competitively minded thing. This is where the choice was made. We want this to be the weather generation. Because every time rain was a problem after this, it was never, hey, maybe it's rain that's a problem. It's like, no, this specific abuser will be broken. Or will be banned, from Manaphy to Thunderous later on, and then in Black and White 2, all the attempts to ban Keldeo, when Tornadus Therian. and even something stupid like Genesect being even dumber on Rain. Genesect Rain teams were so stupid. I mean, Genesect Sun gets like all the credit, but Genesect Rain was unbelievably dumb. So, and just all the stupid stuff that happens when you have unkillable Tentacruel in conjunction with Ferrothorn and. So, my frustration with Rain aside, there's a lot of fallacious arguments here, but the crux comes from only a few. Sorry, I'm organized. The fallacious argument comes from wanting to preserve Rain at all costs, which is not competitively minded. It's we want Rain in the metagame because it's unique and it'll make it the weather generation, and it'll, we don't want to remove the possibilities of using Rain, even though Rain is messing everything up. And to the player base's credit, there are some people who agree with this, but in this thread, as you'll see if you skim through it, there are some people who are like, yeah, this is missing the point. Rain is going to be a problem either way. And then there's another great argument, like Frankie makes some great points about how, look, Drizzle is the problem, not just the Swift Swim Sweepers, and if Tobes makes a great point about bans should not be made just to keep a certain style playable. So, it's funny, because later in the generation when people were complaining about Stall being unviable, then there was a lot of outcry like, well, we have no obligation to make Stall a viable playstyle, which is kind of funny. And it's also funny because another controversial ban later in Generation 5 was Blaziken. That was a big one because it was the first starter Pokemon ever banned from OU. And people were like, oh, come on, I want Blaziken, to not be in Ubers. Can you just ban Speed Boost on Blaziken? And we're like, oh, no, we don't do complex bans, even though we had just done the most complex ban and not allowing Drizzle and Swift Swim on the same team. At least if Swift Swim itself had been axed, then that would have, been more consistent. But, in retrospect, it also seems weird. Like, why do we need Swift Swim around so bad? Just so we could counter-team Rain some. That's... and then there's another argument here, which I really dislike, which is, oh, Rain is needed to keep Sand in check. It's like, just because Rain is around does not mean that Sand is not going to be dominant. Excadrill and Landorus were killing stuff left and right with Swift Swim in the picture, so it's not like making Rain worse would somehow change that for the better. Yeah, so many, And even after Drizzle's, this insanely controversial ban that shaped the entire generation, because, it's the kind of thing where you really have to nail it early on, whatever the problem is, because if you drag your feet even a little, then people are going to say, oh, it's too late. Oh, yeah, we should have done it earlier. When Rain was brought up for a ban for the 6 billionth time, I remember, I've mentioned this in other videos, but in February, March, maybe even January-ish of 2013. So, and XY came out in like September, I think, maybe October, November, but like way more than half a year before that. And people were already saying, no, it's too late. We won't be able to do. So, and this is 4 months into the generation's existence. So forget, a couple years down, like a year and a half down the line. So, or no, sorry, 2 years down the line from this, like 2 years exactly. So this ban was so controversial because it has that whole unprecedented factor where they're really bending over backwards to keep Rain around, and then we look back and it's like, oh yeah, of course we were never gonna get Rain, out of the metagame or permanent weather or whatever it is, because we made the decision early on. Yeah, we want Rain around, and this is how we're going to do it. So. And there's also another fallacious argument of, we don't want to have to ban more, which is bonkers, because you can never predict, we'll have to, if we do this, then otherwise we'll have to, if we ban Rain, we'll have to ban Sand too, and it's like, okay, then ban Sand. It's early in the generations, 4 months in. If you ban, and we wound up banning Sandrush Excadrill anyway. So, and when I say ban Sand, I mean ban Sand or whatever is being broken on Sand. It's a fine line to tread. I understand. I just wish we had been a little more willing to go back on this proposal, which set the tone in all the wrong ways for this generation. And I mean, the problem started before as well, when we decided, yeah, Darkrai, Deoxys Attack, Skyman. Have I mentioned those yet? Because, yeah, those are running around in OU. How awesome is that? So, yeah, the not having to ban other stuff thing is ridiculous. And there's so many fallacious arguments from people in charge of tiering, and it's disappointing. But that's why it's so controversial. I think it's the most controversial. If you have a different opinion and you think, no, of course, this was way more controversial. Because, I mean, there are a lot of other bans that I was thinking of after I came up with the premise. I was like, well, Baton Pass and Arena Trap stuff, that was really big because it had Diglett getting banned. But ultimately I went with this just because it was so, it's not even a Pokemon. It's not even like a move or an ability in particular, like Shadow Tag or something. It's two different abilities in conjunction with each other banned on the same team. Now that's as complex as it gets. Funnily enough, it did ban Drizzle Polito from being used on the same team as Swift Swim Magikarp, which is hilarious. So, yeah, so I will, I think that's pretty much more or less all I wanted to say. So, yeah, so this thread is a pretty good read for a piece of Smogon history. And, yeah, that's, it was so different back then. And, yeah, I'll stop before I have a nostalgia attack. So, thank you for watching. I hope, I really recommend Frankie's post. Oh, I forgot he made that great point about how Rain's offensive threats are way more dangerous because they get both the speed, in terms of Swift Swim, they get the speed boost and boost on their water stab, whereas Excadrill and Landorus, then Excadrill gets faster, Landorus gets stronger, and Rain has both. So, yeah, Frankie was a great, great player, and a great guy. And I miss a lot of people in this thread. Yeah, so I'll link that and the Wi-Fi battle if you want some real fun stuff. So, yeah, if you would like to have more of a debate on Pokemon tiering policy, I'm always up for it. So leave a comment. There's so many things. There's so much to chew on in this kind of discussion. So, yeah. Thank you for watching. I hope this was of use and or interest to you, and I look forward to your opinions. And I will see you next time.